So now this is what mine looks like, and I've reached the back. Go ahead and leave a large loop of yarn where you left off, and then you're going to set your foot aside for now while I show you how to make the toenails. So now I'm going to show you how to make one of these pyramid toenails. So I'm going to set this one aside. I've already made one. You need to make 2 of them, and each one has 3 of these small triangles, which were the same size that we made for the ear. So I'm going to make one with you on video tutorial just to kind of show you how to make it again. But we've already made this once before with the ears. So you're going to start with the slip knot. And then you're going to make your chain of 5. Since we've done this before, I'm just kind of going through it again with you. So chain of 5, and then single crochet into the second chain from the hook, and then 1 single crochet in each stitch back across, and that will give you a stitch count of 4. Then you're going to chain 1, turn your work, make a single crochet into the next stitch, single crochet into the next stitch, and then single crochet into the last stitch. So we still have a stitch count of 4. Then we're going to just turn our work, make a single crochet into the next stitch for 1, single crochet into the next stitch for 2, single crochet into the last stitch for 3. Turn your work, single crochet into the next stitch for 1, single crochet into the last stitch for 2. And then turn your work and then slip stitch into the next stitch. Then go ahead and finish off. But this time finish off leaving enough for sewing the triangles together, and then also you'll use this to sew the toenail onto the foot. So now make 3 of the small triangles for one of the toenails. So after you have your 3 triangles, then we're going to sew 2 of the triangles together. So you want to take one triangle and lay it on the other triangle so that the points of the triangle are together. Then take your tapestry needle and you're going to sew the tip of the point, and then you're going to sew all down the edge of the triangle. So here's the tip of the point of the triangle, and here's the base of the triangle. Then when you finish sewing the edge, go ahead and tie a knot. So you'll have one small loose yarn end, and then the longer loose yarn end that you sewed the edge with will be used to help sew the triangle to the foot. So now you're going to get your 3rd triangle, and you're going to open up the 2 triangles, and you have a ridge here where you sewed the 2 edges together. With the toenails, the ridge is going to be on the right side. So now you're going to take your 3rd triangle and line up the tip. So line up the tip of the triangle. So here's the edge, the ridge where I sewed before, and now I'm going to create a ridge here. So I'm going to get my tapestry needle, and then I'm going to sew into the point. So here's my first triangle, and then I have the ridges here. So I have both wrong sides together, because remember the right side is where the ridge is created for the toenail. So I'm going to go into the tip of the triangle, and then I'm going to sew down the edge, creating a ridge, sewing my 3rd triangle to the 2nd triangle. So here's the first triangle, here's the 2nd triangle, and then here's the 3rd triangle. And then I can take and tie a knot when I reach the end or the base of the triangle. Then you're going to take and open all 3. So you can see this is now the wrong side, and then the right side is with the ridges, if you did it correctly. Then just take that last long end that you left for sewing on the tip of the triangle, put it onto your tapestry needle, and then you're just going to line up the wrong sides together, the last on the opposite sides of both triangles, and you can see how you're forming a pyramid. So I have a pyramid formed. Here's the base of all the triangles, and all of the tips are now together. And then I'm going to sew the last edge of the triangles together that form the pyramid. And then I'm going to tie a knot where I finished at the bottom or the base of the triangle. Then you can take and tuck all of the small loose yarn ends into the inside of the pyramid. So you take all of the small loose yarn ends, and I have enough of the loose yarn ends, the small ones, to fill the inside, so I don't need to use any craft stuffing. So then after you tuck all of the loose yarn ends in, you only have the 3 remaining long loose yarn ends that you're going to be using to sew the toenail in place. So you need 2 of these. Go ahead and make the other one the exact same way. So now we're ready. After you have your 2 toenail pyramids, we're ready to sew them onto the foot. So you're going to take one of the pyramids or toenails, and you want to take your foot and you want to kind of fold it to find the center, and then take your pyramid, and I'm going to place my pyramid over this area here. So I'm going to go ahead and take the tip of the pyramid, which is the top portion. So here is actually the tip of the pyramid is the toenail here, and I'm at the base. You want the edge, one of the ridge edges, to face up. So I'm using this long loose yarn end for sewing. And then that's where I'm bringing the tapestry needle through. And then I'm making sure that the loose yarn ends stay tucked inside. And then I can line up that sewn ridge with the top of the brown portion. And then you're just going to take and sew down the edge of the pyramid or the toenail to secure it in place. Make sure that you don't sew anything on the opposite side with your yarn. Keep that out of the way, and you don't want to poke yourself when you go in and out. And then you're just going to sew the toenail in place. Keep positioning it, make sure that it's positioned correctly. You want the point of the pyramid to face out. That's the tip of the toenail. And then you're sewing all along the base of the pyramid to the foot. And then when I reach the next long yarn end, I go ahead and remove the tapestry needle, grab my new long yarn end for sewing, put it onto my tapestry needle, reposition the toenail, and then I start to continue sewing with my new long loose yarn end, and I tie a knot on the inside with the previous one. And you can trim loose yarn ends too if you get too many that are in the way. I'm going to go ahead and trim this one to get it out of the way. And then I want to double check and make sure that my long loop that I left in the back is still okay, which it is. And then I'm just going to continue sewing, reposition my toenail, and then continue sewing along the base until I reach the next corner of the pyramid. So go ahead, finish sewing your toenail in place, and then come back. Then you just take and position your next toenail right next to the previous toenail and then sew it in place. Then, after you finish sewing the toenails in place, you're ready to finish sewing the rest of the leg. So just go right where you left off, and then you're just going to make one single crochet in every stitch around until you've completed 16 rounds. So 16 rounds of one single crochet in every stitch around. So after you finish your 16 rounds of one single crochet in every stitch, you can go ahead and add craft stuffing to the leg, and you can continue to add craft stuffing as you close as needed. And now we're going to make our decrease rounds until we close the leg. So for the first decrease round, you're going to make one single crochet into 3 stitches. And then you're going to single crochet 2 stitches together. And then you're going to repeat that pattern all the way around back to the yarn marker. One single crochet into 3 stitches, and then single crochet 2 stitches together, repeating that pattern all the way around back to the yarn marker. Then you'll have one stitch remaining. Just make a single crochet into that stitch, and then move the yarn marker up. And then you're going to make one single crochet into 2 stitches, and then single crochet 2 stitches together, and then repeat that pattern all the way around back to the yarn marker. This is what mine looks like so far. I added just a little bit more craft stuffing. Then I'm just going to take the yarn marker, place it right where I left off, and this time you're just going to make one single crochet into 1 stitch, and then single crochet 2 stitches together, and then repeat that pattern all the way around back to the yarn marker. Then I just put one single crochet into the last remaining stitch. Then you remove the yarn marker, and you can see that we're almost closed. So now you're just going to skip a stitch, go into the next stitch, yarn over, turn the hook upside down, and then bring the yarn through both loops for a slip stitch. And we're just going to slip stitch the leg closed. So again, skip a stitch, go into the next stitch, yarn over, turn the hook upside down, and bring the yarn through both loops for a slip stitch. And you're going to continue slip stitching until the leg is completely closed. So I have one more. Just yarn over and pull the yarn through both loops, and then it's completely closed. Now you can finish off, just yarn over and just pull enough yarn through to bury your loose yarn end. So this is how my leg looks now. Looks good. So now I'm going to bury my loose yarn end. Just take your tapestry needle, put it onto that loose yarn end, and then go right in where you finished off, and then come out anywhere on the foot, and then just trim the loose yarn end, and then you have 1 foot finished. Go ahead and finish a total of 4 feet, and then come back. I used my Dritz Home upholstery needles. It comes in a 4-pack. And for this project I used my 8-inch needle, and it just works easier for attaching the movable legs. So now after you finish all 4 of your legs, you're ready to sew them onto the body. And I just used my 8-inch upholstery needle, and make sure you have enough yarn, the same colored yarn as the main color of your alpaca, to go through the legs and the body twice. So to start, you're going to need the 2 front legs. The legs are all made the same way, so just grab 2 of them. And then you also want to make sure that the legs are facing forward, so the toenails should be facing forward. And then just take your upholstery needle, and you're going to go about 3 rounds down from the top, right into the side of the leg. And you want to come out on the opposite side at the same level. So make sure that you're at the same level when you exit the opposite side, right on the side midline, and then just bring the yarn through. And you want to leave a long enough loose yarn end that it doesn't come through as you're working through the legs and the body. So make sure you leave a good amount. Then you're ready to go through the body. So on the body, I usually line up the legs midline with an imaginary line from the ears of the alpaca. And then I go midline halfway through the body. So I just kind of line up and see where I want to position the legs. And then once I know where I want to position the legs, I kind of turn and see where the yarn would enter the body. And then you just take your tapestry needle or upholstery needle and just go right through the body where you want to have the legs positioned. And then you want to exit the opposite side of the body at the same level. So here is the front panel, and I went about 4 to 5 stitches back from the front panel. And then I came out on the opposite side at the same level. And then you just bring the yarn through the body. And I usually leave about 1 to 2 inches, I'm trying to find my leg, between the leg and the body. So 1 to 2 inches of yarn between the leg and the body. And then you're ready to go through the other leg. And again, you want to make sure that the toenails are facing forward. Then you can take your upholstery needle and go through the side. And again, I go about 3 rounds down and then come out on the opposite side at about the same level. Then you want to go about a stitch over. It can be stitched down or a stitch over here or even a stitch here, but about a stitch from where you exited. Just go right back in, and you're going to come out a stitch away from where you first went into the leg. And then you just bring the yarn right back through. And you want to be very careful not to cross the yarn strands or go through the yarn strands. And then again, you're going to go about a stitch away and then go through and then come out a stitch away from where you entered the body. And the whole time you want to make sure you're not tangling your yarn or crossing or going through any previous yarn strands. So I'm just going to untangle that one. Then you're ready to go through the opposite leg about a stitch over. So I'm going to go about a stitch over and then come out a stitch over from where I first entered the leg. And then you're going to repeat this whole process one more time and then come back. So now you can see that I have 4 strands of yarn between the body and both legs, and I have the 2 loose yarn ends from where I exited, and they're about a stitch away from each other. Then you can take and just pull on the 2 loose yarn ends to pull and cinch the legs against each other. Now if you meet resistance, don't keep pulling both strands. Let go, take one strand, and pull on one strand at a time, cinching the legs against the body. And then you just want to double check, make sure you don't have any loops of yarn between the legs and the body, and make sure that your legs are even. And then once you have them positioned where you want, then you can go ahead and tie a knot. So I'm happy with how mine are positioned, so I'm going to go ahead and tie a knot. Then you can take and trim the loose yarn ends, and you still need to leave enough to bury into the leg, so don't cut it too short. Then once you've cut it, you can take your tapestry needle. So now you want your regular tapestry needle, and then put it onto the loose yarn end, and then you're going to go in right where you tied your knot and then come out on the under portion of the leg. Gently give a tug on it and then just trim, and that's how you bury your loose yarn ends. So go ahead, finish burying your loose yarn ends, and then attach the back legs the exact same way. So you want to line up your back legs and make sure that when you line them up that they're even with the front legs. So I usually go by the dimple and line up the dimple. And then you don't want the legs too high, too low. You want them just even with the front legs. And you don't want them too far back because you need to have room for the back portion of the alpaca. So I usually line it up about the same, about 4 to 5 in. So mine might even be about 6 stitches in. No, actually it's about 5. So I'm going to move it over. And once you get the yarn through, you'll be able to see where you want to line it up to go through the body. So now you can see I have my back legs attached and the alpaca stands perfectly. They're both even. Also, your legs aren't riding up past the body. So you want to make sure that they're even and not riding too high. And then you have your legs that move. So now I'm going to show you how to make the tail. So you're going to take your beige colored yarn and you're going to fold it over on itself to form a loop. Take your crochet hook, go right through the loop, hold the base of the loop with your middle finger and your thumb. And then you're just going to yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through the loop for a slip knot. Go ahead and cinch that knot down, cinch the loop around your crochet hook, and now you're going to make a chain of 10. I'm just going to show 4 of them on video tutorial. So you just yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through the loop for 1, 2, 3, 4. So go ahead, finish a chain of 10 and then come back. So after you make a chain of 10, you're going to slip stitch into the first chain that you made to form a circle. So you take your crochet hook, go into that first chain that you made, and then you're just going to yarn over, turn the hook upside down and bring the yarn through both loops for a slip stitch. And now you formed a circle. Then you're going to chain 1 and then make 1 single crochet in every stitch around for 3 rounds. And you can use your loose yarn end as a marker. And as you make your single crochet in every stitch around, you want to turn your work so that you're working around the outside. So you just keep making 1 single crochet in every stitch around for 3 rounds. And you're going to use that loose yarn end as a yarn marker. So you'll know when you've completed. This is my first round that I've completed because I've reached the loose yarn end, and you kind of pull the loose yarn end through because you want to work around the outside. So now I'm working on my second round. I'm just going to continue making 1 single crochet in every stitch around until I've completed a total of 3 rounds. And I'll keep turning it so that I'm working around the outside. And you can see how I'm going through both loops of the stitch. So go ahead, finish making one single crochet in every stitch around until you've completed a total of 3 rounds, and then come back. So this is how my work looks after finishing 3 rounds. 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to make a decrease round. Go ahead and place your yarn marker right where you left off just to make it a little easier. And then you're going to make 1 single crochet into 2 stitches. And then you're going to single crochet 2 stitches together. And then you're going to repeat that pattern. 1 single crochet into 2 stitches and single crochet 2 stitches together all the way around back to the yarn marker. Now when you reach the yarn marker, go ahead and just end with a single crochet 2 stitches together. Then you're going to move your yarn marker up and just make 1 single crochet in every stitch around for only 1 round. This is my 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and then you may have 7 stitches or 8 stitches, and that's fine. Then just take and remove the yarn marker, and you have a small hole left. You're going to slip stitch it closed. So skip a stitch, go into the next stitch, yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through both for a slip stitch. And you're just going to slip stitch it closed. Just keep slip stitching around. I'm going to make 1 more slip stitch, and then it's completely closed and you have a little point to the tail. So then go ahead and finish off, just yarn over and just pull enough yarn through to bury a loose yarn end. So now you just take your tapestry needle, put it onto that loose yarn end, and then just bring it right through where you finished off. Be careful you don't poke yourself, and just come up through the center of the tail. And then you can just trim it. And then just tuck the loose yarn ends into the tail. And then your tail is ready to sew in place. So you just need to flatten it. And then this portion, where the opening is where you're going to sew it to the back of the alpaca body. So now get your tapestry needle and the same colored yarn, and then take your alpaca tail, make sure it's flat, the point is facing down, and then the opening is lined up with the back of the alpaca. Make sure that you center it, and then once you've centered it, just take and sew the alpaca tail in place. So again, you want to make sure you leave enough of a loose yarn end for tying a knot. And then I usually go right back where I went in, and then I can tie a knot. And then you just sew all along the opening or the base of the tail. This is what the tail looks like after finished sewing it in place. And now you're ready to decorate with fur. So we're going to start with the head for decorating the fur. So now you're going to get some of your fur, whatever color that you're using for your alpaca, and it might be helpful to use your DMC yarn threader. Just put the hook right through the tapestry needle and then just bring the fur through really easily, and then just trim some of the fur that you're going to use. And then we're going to decorate the top of the head. So for the top of the head, you're just going to take the tapestry needle and then just go through the top of the head and bring the yarn through. And then you're just going to loop the yarn. You can trim it more later, so I'm just going to tie a knot. And then you can just take and loop the yarn, just go in and out, creating small loops on the top of the head with your yarn. And then I also went towards the back and created some loops towards the back. And you can take and make as many loops of yarn that you want. Now in the front of the head, I went ahead and cut the loops of yarn and then tied a knot. But in the back of the head, I didn't. I just left some of the loops of yarn. And then you can just style the hair how you want it. And this is how mine looks. And this is the hair on my other one. Trying to get it so you can see. So now I'm going to show you how to make the neck fur. So now you're going to need your 6mm crochet hook and your fur yarn. And you're going to take and fold the yarn over on itself to form a loop. Take your crochet hook, go right through the loop, hold the base of the loop with your middle finger and your thumb. And then just yarn over, turn the hook upside down, and bring the yarn through the loop for a slip knot. Go ahead and cinch that knot down. And don't worry about making the loop too tight around your crochet hook. You want to have a little bit of a loose loop. Then you're just going to make a chain, and I'm just going to show you 4 of them. You just yarn over, turn the hook upside down, and bring the yarn through for a chain. And then just gently pull up on your hook just a little bit because you don't want the loop to be too tight around your crochet hook. So then you just yarn over, turn the hook upside down, and go through the second loop for your second chain. Gently pull up on the loop. Move your fingers up to hold it. And then just yarn over, turn the hook upside down, and go through the chain. Bring up the loop slightly, so that's my third. Fourth, bring the loop up slightly. And then just continue making your chain. And I finished with a chain of 23, which fits around the neck of my alpaca. So when I'm finished with my chain of 23, my neck fur measures approximately 10 inches. So the chain measures approximately 10 inches. Then you're just going to take and make a double crochet into the 4th chain from the hook. And you can see that it's real difficult to see the stitches. So it doesn't have to be perfect, and you don't have to worry about your stitch count or anything like that. So as long as you just guesstimate, you just want basically some fur to cover around the neck. So basically what I do is I guesstimate about 4 stitches, and sometimes you can feel, here's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you're going to make a double crochet into that 4th chain from the hook. So you just yarn over, go into that 4th chain from the hook, bring up a loop, and then you have 3 loops on your hook. Go ahead and yarn over, turn the hook upside down, and go through 2 of them. Let me try that again. So I'm going to bring up a loop. Now I have 3 chains on the loops on the hook. Go ahead and yarn over, go through 2. Then I have 2 loops remaining. And then just yarn over and go through those 2 remaining. And I completed a double crochet. And now you're just going to make 1 double crochet all the way back across. And like I said, don't worry about your stitch count. You can just guesstimate. And sometimes you can even feel the stitches. You just yarn over, go into the next stitch, bring up a loop, make a double crochet, and then you're just going to make one double crochet in every stitch back across. And like I said, you can just guesstimate because you're not going to be able to see the stitches very well. So you kind of just guesstimate where the stitch would be. And then you can see how you're making a little fur panel. I'm just going to show you a couple more. And sometimes if you can't get into the stitch, I'll show you what you can do for that as well. So let's just say you just have difficulties and you're just not able to get into stitch. You can just yarn over, go under the chain, bring up a loop, bring up the loop as high as you can get it, and then just yarn over and go through two, and then you yarn over and go through two. And then you just went under the chain. And that works as well if you just cannot get into the stitch for whatever reason. So go ahead, finish making a double crochet in every stitch back across, and then come back. Then when you reach the end, you can see how mine looks. You can go ahead and finish off, just yarn over, and then just pull enough yarn through to sew the fur onto the neck. Then just take the fur and your tapestry needle, and you're going to wrap the fur around the neck. And I usually wrap it so that the two ends are in the back. And then I put it just under the neck, just under the head, where the neck meets the head. And then you can take and just sew the fur in place. And what I do is I go right down the center of the strip. And then just make sure everything's okay in the back. And then I just go right down the center, just going in and out, and sewing the strip in place. And make small stitches showing, and then you can make large stitches on the wrong side coming out on the opposite side. And then just sew the neck fur in place. And then I finish where my loose yarn end is, and then I just take and tie a knot. I usually tie it 3 times, and then you can take and just trim about 1 centimeter away from where you tied the knot, and then just let it blend in with the fur. And then you can make as many neck rings as you want. I'm going to show you how to make, this was 1 round of double crochet. I'm going to show you how to make 2 rounds. So for the body fur and for the lower neck, I started with a chain of 28, and then I made a double crochet into the 4th chain from the hook, and 1 double crochet in every stitch back across. And like I said, don't worry about the stitch count. And the first row is always a little bit more difficult than the second row, and that's because you're trying to get into the stitch, whereas on the second row it's a lot easier, and I'll be showing you that once I get to it. So like I said, don't worry about getting into the stitch and what your stitch count is, as long as you can just get your fur across the row. So now I finished 1 row. It looks really pretty. So now I'm going to show you how I made the second row. So to make the second row, you just chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then turn your work. And then you're just going to make 1 double crochet evenly spaced across the top of the first row. And you can see how much easier it is. You don't know where you're going, if you're going in the stitch or between the double crochet, but it doesn't matter because you're just making your row a little bit, your panel a little bit larger with the fur, and you can see how much easier it is. You just go right where you think the next stitch should go, and it's much easier than the first row. So go ahead, finish making your second row. So this is what mine looks like, really pretty after I finish the second row. And then I'm just going to finish off, just yarn over and just pull enough yarn through to sew the fur onto the body. And I also made, this is the same way that I made the fur on the bottom of the neck. So you'll need 2 of these, one for the body and then one for the bottom of the neck. So on the bottom of the body is where the 2 ends are going to meet, and you want to center it between the 2 legs. So make sure it's centered and that you start on the bottom. And then I sew it the same way. I just go right through the center of the first strip. Now if you meet any resistance while sewing, here's a little trick that you can use. Try going through the fur first and then go right into the body where you can see the holes. And then come right back up through the fur. So if you have a lot of difficulties, that's one method that you can use too. That's helpful. And this is what the fur looks like after I've sewed it on the belly. And this is what it looks like after I placed the second neck piece. And now I'm going to show you how to make the fur around the feet. So now I'm going to show you how to make the fur that goes around the feet. So for the fur panel that goes around the feet, you need to start with a chain of 18, and then you make 1 row of 1 double crochet in every stitch back across. So the fur that goes around the feet is approximately 6.5 inches in length, and the fur that went around the body is approximately 8.5 inches in length. So now you want to take the fur that goes around the feet, and you're going to start in the back, and I'm going to show you an easy way that I sew mine on. So first I just take my tapestry needle and the long end that I left for sewing, and you want to try to go in the space, one of the spaces in the fur, to make it easier to bring the yarn through the fur. Then you take your tapestry needle and you want to go into the back of the leg, about 2 rounds up from the brown portion, and then go, you can make a wider stitch and then come up through the hole. You want to make sure you come through the hole and you don't grab a little stitch of the yarn, because then you're going to have difficulty bringing the needle through. So see how easy that is to bring that through. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, you will when you have trouble, if you do have trouble getting the fur to go through the holes. Then you just go right through the fur, and remember you try to go into the gap, and I usually go right down the center and then bring the yarn through. And remember, you need to have the yarn go all the way and meet in the back. And then you just go try to find one of the gaps, make a small stitch, and bring the tapestry needle through. And then again you're going to take and go through the holes and then bring the yarn through. See how easy that is? So that's the method that I used, and I found it really easy to sew the fur in place when I used that method. And then you just sew the fur in place on the bottom of the foot. So now you can see that I have all the feet covered. And now I'm going to show you how to make the tail fur. So for the tail, we're going to make a chain, first with the slip knot, like we've done before. Oop, try that again. So I'm making my slip knot. And then I'm going to make a chain of 6. And then I'm going to double crochet back into the 4th chain from the hook. And then I'm going to make 2 more double crochet in this row. So if you need to go in the same stitch, that's fine. Just make 2 more double crochet. Then you're going to chain 3, turn your work, double crochet, make 1 double crochet in the next stitch, and then you can finish off. Just yarn over and then just pull enough yarn through, and I just have enough to sew my tail in place. So now you just take, and you'll notice that you have a wider portion and a narrower portion. The wider portion, of course, goes up towards the top of the tail. And then you just take and sew the tail in place. I'm going to bring it to the wrong side. And then I'm going to take and go in through the tail. I might just go right through. I'm going to go right through the tail to the back. And then I'm going to come up through the bottom of the tail. And then go through the fur. So you're just going to take and sew it that way until you've centered this furry portion on the tail. Then I'm going to end right where I have my loose yarn end, and I can take and tie a knot. And then I'm just going to trim about 1 centimeter away, and then just blend the fur knot in with the tail. Now the fur that goes on the front of the alpaca, the front chest, I made a chain of 9 and then 2 rows of 1 double crochet in every stitch, and the length is approximately 3 inches in length. And then you just sew it in place on the front of the alpaca. I have my alpaca upside down the same way. So I just go in and out, and then I just sew the front panel in place.